I was playing this video since the end of Volume 7, but I wanted to see how Volume 8 would shape Ironwood. And in parts, I like how they've handled it, and in others, I do think things could have been done better. However, this video is purely objective, with my opinions being solely based on decisions characters have made and how they could have handled these situations better. This is not from a critical standpoint, but a quote, if I were in the room, here's what I would advise them to do or not do, or say or not say, end quote. I am going to give context of Ironwood as a character and then narrate his side of the story up to the point of Volume 8, Episode 10. So if this is out before the episode airs on March 6th, spoiler warning. I will likely do a part 2 covering episodes 11 through 14 and perhaps weigh in on my overall thoughts on him, as many speculate Volume 8 is his send off. It's the final hour for Ironwood. On another note, I will be making a video that I am a bit more critical on how Ironwood has been handled this volume, but not from a place of malice or hate, but how I think the writing could have been better. I think it is fair to offer solutions or give the writer something to work with, an answer to the perceived problem, if you will. So, present the problem, explain why it's a problem, and then give them a solution. That's how criticism ideally should be handled, at least to me. I do understand why decisions were made despite my initial disdain for how episode 10 handled Ironwood, and this video will also make my opinion of him and my reaction null and void. So, if you watch that reaction, know that I no longer feel as strong as I did about him then. I have softened up to his character and the direction he's going after having many a thoughtful discussion with other fans that opened my eyes a little bit more, giving me more perspective. So, with that out of the way, I hope you enjoy the video and be sure to leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing for gaming content, tier maker videos, and of course, more Ruby videos. And again, this video is purely objective in nature and should be seen as something akin to a documentary of Ironwood's character. A tragic villain is an antagonist the audience can sympathize with to a degree. We may not necessarily agree with their actions, and in most cases, we will end up condemning them. However, it's understood why they are the way they are, and at times we may even find ourselves rooting for them to some extent. There are three main ways to define a tragic villain, and if you look at these terms that I'm about to explain, Ironwood fits the bill for all three to some extent. These are villains with painful backstories, protective villains, and possessed villains. The first one is a villain whose past has given them a negative outlook on life due to past experiences with events and people. This could happen if they were rejected, scarred, and or lost loved ones. The second is a villain who does foul deeds to protect those they care about. They will also use extreme and horrendous measures to do so, and are often confronted by somebody who does not agree with their methodology. The last one is someone who is controlled, corrupted, and indoctrinated by something driving them down a sinister path. Ironwood has all three of these traits, as the fall of Beacon and perhaps how he became robotic have made him into a horrific monster. He is also very protective of his home country, though to a fault, as he is willing to sacrifice half of it to save the other half that he believes he can save. And of course, his semblance has driven him down this dark path, denying him the ability to see perspectives that are not his own. He is a slave to his own semblance, essentially. On the flip side, he also still carries traits of an anti-hero, as he has been performing actions that were morally correct but done so from a position of self-interest, and later in ways that defy conventional moral ethics. He is very much a character who has both sides of the coin and can be seen as morally gray. He's a man who does believe he is acting in the right and is doing what is best for those whom he has rulership over. Of course, most of us disagree with his methods and actions at this point. So for this recap, if you will, analysis, deep dive, look into Ironwood, I will start with volumes 2 and 3 and set the stage, and I will touch on volumes 4 through 6 to add on more context and build up. But our main focus, of course, will be volume 7 and volume 8 up to episode 10. Spoiler warning once again. I will likely do a second video on the remainder of volume 8 as a sort of part 2 to this video. Anyways, let's go back in time to where things were less depressing and more carefree. James Ironwood is introduced in volume 2, and he seemed to have a good working relationship and friendship with Osmond. There was some history with Glinda, but we don't necessarily know quite what happened between them. He displays his military as a sign of protection, though to Oz it's a sign of conflict. If this is the size of our defense, then how dangerous a foe are we expecting to fight? His military did, in the end, save Vale from a grim invasion perpetuated by Roman, Torchwick, and the White Fang. This further justified his actions in his own mind. He captures Roman and aims to interrogate him on who is behind the scenes controlling things, because he knows it's not Roman, it's someone else. He is put in charge of security of the Amity Arena after Vale's council lost faith in Oz and seemed to be considering removing him from his headmaster position. Ironwood even says, "You brought this on yourself." We do learn that he, Oz, Glinda, and Crow are part of a shadow group that is waging a war against some great threat and are safeguarding magical wielders known as maidens, which we later learn are keys to powerful objects known as relics. When Beacon falls under attack after Penny is violently destroyed by Pyrrha thanks to Emerald's manipulation of Pyrrha, he panics when explaining to Oz about Penny, as it did look suspicious. But Oz gives him the go-ahead to use his military, which is eventually sabotaged by Roman using a virus created by Arthur Watts. When the students find him, we see a softer side to Ironwood, as he gives the students a choice to run to safety or protect their school, and states no one would blame them if they chose the former. He has faith in their abilities, but would prefer not to endanger them. In the middle of the Battle of Vale, he is ambushed by his own robotic soldiers, but manages to survive, and we see he is partially robotic, an allusion to the Tin Man. This comes into play later on in terms of how his character progresses. Ironwood does survive the battle and returns to Atlas. Volume 4. When we first get reintroduced to Ironwood, he is arguing with Jacques Schnee about his decision to cut off the trade of dust with other kingdoms, as it is costing him and his company money. Ironwood fears other nations declaring war after what happened at Beacon. The first sign of his paranoia and the PTSD of Beacon's fall has now been placed within him. He is still kind towards Weiss. He later stands up for Weiss after she calls out a woman who rudely mocks and belittles Vale for not having proper defenses, and this causes Weiss to accidentally summon a Borbotusk. But Ironwood does save the woman and refuses to arrest Weiss, as he fully agreed with her outburst against this woman. He later gets a report from Winter Schnee about something unraveling at Mistral, and does not trust Leo to handle the matter. Jacques states that Ironwood has never trusted anyone other than himself, which Ironwood does not deny. He then declares he is closing the borders. No one in, no one out. In Volumes 5 and Volume 6, Ironwood is not present, but we get bits about him and how he has closed the border and withdrawn all of his forces to Atlas. At the end of Volume 6, we see them all deployed and on guard as if expecting a pending invasion. Then we move on to our main event, Volume 7. When we get reintroduced to him, he is welcoming and apologetic to Ruby and Co. and openly welcomes them to his inner circle and reveals his plan to them. He intends to expose the truth about Salem and re-establish world communications in order to unite the world against Salem. He is happy that Oz is back and gives Ruby the relic as a display of trust, which probably is a key factor in her second-guessing her own decision to lie to him about the lamp and about Salem. But her history with Leo and Oz was likely the key factor in her omitting the truth, and even though Ironwood has not really given them any reason to doubt him, though the situation in Mantle may have given a bad impression in their minds. He gives Crow a impassioned hug as if he's finally got somebody that he can fully open himself up to, because Leo is dead. Oz was presumed dead as well, at least gone. But he does hug Crow because he is genuinely happy to see a fellow compatriot once more. We do learn that his political opponents are getting killed by Tyrion, and is causing people to distrust and even hate him. However, he doesn't care about his public image, as he believes his actions will be forgiven in due time and would gladly be seen as a devil if it meant protecting people. We see he is genuinely protective of those under him when Jacques berates and antagonizes Weiss after arriving at the abandoned mine. He steps in and it profusely shuts him down, defending Weiss once again. Later on, he shows that he has full faith and trust in Rubico and appoints them as huntsmen and huntresses, as he believes they've done enough to earn the license. This, in my opinion, is where Ruby should have come clean about both Salem and the lamp, as at this point, they should firmly believe Ironwood is not going to betray them like Oz and Leo did. When Penny is framed for a massacre at a rally for Robin Hill in her political campaign to become a councilwoman, we see the first cracks of his mental state being shaken to a low point. He threatens the idea of martial law and wants Robin arrested, but is willing to negotiate if she cooperates to his terms. This is the first time we see his iron will be driven by anger rather than a need to protect. In order to perhaps pacify Robin, Yang and Blake inform Robin about the tower and why Ironwood is being hush-hush about it. Robin knows they're not lying, but does not relent her aggression. This decision, of course, was an act against Ironwood's plan, but Ironwood's lack of concern for his public image has made it easy for people to not be willing to work with or trust him. His paranoia and fear have really led him down a path to where he may end up isolating himself and be left alone with no one to stand with him. But of course, he only recently learned Tyrion was afoot, and this furthered his fear as he now thinks Salem may be planning something with Atlas and Mantle, and maybe even more guarded about withholding information such as the tower and his plan with the truth about Salem. Jacques, having been elected to the council, later entraps Ironwood, where he and the council, as well as Robin, accuse him of power abuse and question whether his eligibility to be a part of Atlas's council is valid anymore. Ironwood does a very poor job of convincing them, and Winter makes matters worse with her outbursts, which Jacques flips on Ironwood's inability to trust people, suggesting that people do not have a reason to trust him anymore. However, Weiss makes the save and reveals Jacques had made a deal with Watts, completely destroying any credibility he had, and makes the other council members and Robin reconsider their opinions on him, as they now believe he was keeping secrets to save people. However, with Watts sabotaging Mantle's heating grid, which draws in a horde of Grimm, his will begins to falter until Oscar is able to get through to him. He then decides to alter his plan in order to deal with Watts and Tyrion. Before it's enacted, though, Oscar reveals the truth about Salem and the lamp, but he does seem to forgive them. He and Robin make a public announcement and reveal the existence of Salem and make a vow to untie the two halves of the kingdom and unite the world together against her. He then lures Watts to amity by announcing its completion and has Crow and Clover join with Robin to deal with Tyrion. The plan succeeds as both Watts and Tyrion are defeated and captured, but unbeknownst to both the villains, Ironwood and Ruby, Cinder makes a move that shatters Ironwood and allows the fear and paranoia to take the front seat. He confronts Ruby about Robin knowing the plan, to which Yang confesses to telling her, which infuriates both the Aesops and Ironwood. They bicker until Salem appears and mockingly congratulates them on beating her underlings. She then declares that they were merely setting the stage for her arrival. She tells Ironwood, surrender the relics, and this will all be over. But he refuses. With everything that has happened, from the mistrust to Cinder's actions and Salem announcing she is on her way to Atlas, Ironwood is completely broken. Any chance of an alliance with Ruby or anyone else is removed from the table, and he declares Ruby, Crow, Oscar, and many others as traitors. This act contributed to the death of Clover, Tyrion's escape, and has further divided Mantle and Atlas. It is now a kingdom divided. Oscar attempts to make Ironwood come to his senses, but he blames everyone for things falling apart and that he had been right the entire time, as only he saw the bigger picture. Oscar tells Ironwood that acting this way makes him as dangerous as Salem. His response is shooting Oscar with the intent to kill him. Winter later informs him that Freya is dead, but does not acquire the maiden power, infuriating Ironwood. Ironwood has now fully descended into madness, his paranoia and fear driving him to distrust everyone even more so than before. Volume 8. Ironwood asks Penny to return to Atlas so he can open the vault and save Atlas. Ruby interjects, demanding he reconsider saving Mantle, but he refuses, as he does not believe it's possible, and taunts Ruby and Penny by saying, if Atlas's defenses fall, the fault will be on them. We later see him confronting a wounded Winter, and he vents a little to her when she asks what he intends to do, and he replies with, anything, no matter the cost. He then proceeds to shoot Slate, horrifying everyone, including the Aesops and Winter. Ironwood later forces Watts to devise a means of hacking Penny so she can open the vault. Watts informs him that someone with Pietro's credentials is in the command center, and he sends the Aesops to apprehend or kill whomever it is. Watts later gives Ironwood instructions to pass to the Aesops. During the fight, Harriet manages to snag one of Penny's blades, which is used to hack Penny. Though she ends up shutting down, Ironwood demands to know what he did and is angered with Watts and orders the Aesops return him to his cell. Later on, he witnesses his worst fear come to fruition before his own eyes. A river of grim liquid shoots from the ground and spawns several sentinels, which eat into the dirt the shield generators are placed on, which causes two of them to fall, breaking the shield and allowing Monstra and Salem to arrive at Atlas, where it spawns a massive number of Grimm. Ironwood is visibly angered at this and orders all citizens to evacuate to the subway system, as it is no longer safe in Atlas. He and his military brace for the nightmare that has arrived at their front door. In order to deal with Monstra, he orders Winter to deliver a bomb into the whale, as this may be the only way to deal with the creature, as it is impervious to damage from the outside. So after the long break in January, and of course following 1 week break that was issued due to the winter storms in Texas, we see Ironwood yet again looking out as his army is battling the Grimm and dismisses Jacques' capture and demands Crow be arrested. Then we see Oscar's use of Ozpin's magic annihilate Monstra, Salem, and presumably Hazel. Winter and Marrow did seem concerned for Jean and company safety, but they take the bomb back with them and report to Ironwood. Ironwood seems frantic and impatient as he explains the situation. Notes Penny has not returned yet, and also he needs to hold leverage over her. He asks for Ren, Jean, and Yang, and Winter asks why. Ironwood creepily says he had Crow and should have held his life in the balance, but will course correct by leveraging the aforementioned fugitives. Winter has a look of horror and disbelief as Harriet mentions, Winter, let them go. Ironwood is beside himself and crushes the table in a fury. He then gets word about the Schnee dust ships going down to Mantle, and in a sinister tone says, it's all about Mantle. He then gives Penny and Co. an ultimatum. Penny must return and open the vault so Atlas can ascend into the sky. If she does not do so, he will use the bomb meant for Monstra on Mantle. His logic being, if Mantle is gone, then the only thing left to save is Atlas. Ironwood states he does not want to do it, but is willing to. He is banking on Penny's desire to protect, to get her to do what he wants. Ironwood is a broken man, consumed by his fear of Salem, but is bringing Penny back to open the vault a wise decision anymore? Cinder and Watts are still in Atlas. Salem will likely reform on Atlas, and it could be possible that she either revives Monstra or uses its carcass to create something else. We have seen a man with a strong will be broken down and destroyed. Is there any salvation for him anymore? It does not seem likely, but we've seen a well-meaning, caring, and tragic figure descend into madness. This was the tragic downfall of General James Ironwood.